One of the things I wanted to do is bring to light some signs, warning signs of behavior that could lead to destructive relationships, could lead to DV situations. And the Mend Project helps people that are in any type of DV situation, any type of a situation that can be destructive. And so usually it's mostly geared toward romantic relationships, intimate partner relationships, but it could definitely be family relationships. It could be institutional or organizational. There was actually a webinar that the Men Project had. I attended it and I wanted to share some of the findings. So, love bombing. Have you ever been love bombed? So far, when I look at the poll, which I know a few people had answered, let's see. 60% said yes, 40% said not sure. Okay, so good. If you're not sure, I'm going to share some of the signs. And let me begin by sharing what is love bombing. So, love bombing, according to Psychology Today, is the term that refers to a pattern of overly affectionate behavior that typically occurs at the beginning of a relationship, often a romantic one, in which one party bombs the other with over-the-top displays of adoration and attention. This behavior can include showering the other person with gifts and or compliments, declaring love early on, and so we're going to dive in and talk about way more signs than this, but this is just kind of a recap. Love bombing is considered a deliberate and manipulative tactic that is deployed in order to gain the upper hand over a new partner and increase his or her dependence on the bomber. Because of this, it is often attributed to individuals who are high in narcissism or other antisocial traits, or those who engage in DV. It has also been frequently used in reference to cults, right? Which is a part of the organizational or institutional manipulation. However, it is possible for someone to engage in similar behaviors without necessarily having all the intentions. So that's the thing, guys, that part that is tricky is that society has shown this like fairy tale of putting people on a pedestal and showering people with gifts is a sign of love. And so what happens with a love bomber, and I've experienced this myself, is that they put so much attention and focus on you that you feel loved. You feel loved. That's why it's called love bombing. You feel loved, and then they like flip the script, turn 180, and you're like, wait, what happened? And then they get into their other narcissistic behavior. But love bombing could be a sign that you're with somebody with narcissistic traits, or you could be in a manipulative relationship, or at least a somewhat toxic relationship. So this is really important for us to be aware. And so one of the things, and I took like very detailed notes from the webinar, and I'm going to share, and this is the other thing, it's looking for red flags. Like these could be red flags. So just because somebody is showering you with gifts after they've met you in a week doesn't mean that they're a narcissist. They may really like you and really want to like step up potentially, right? But it could be a red flag. This is why I want us to be aware of these. And I definitely had that happen to me. And I didn't even know that this existed until after I got out of the relationship and started being like, oh, this is a thing, right? So I want anyone who might be experiencing this to see some of the signs or warning signs. And what the Mend Project said is that these could be, love bombing could be the first stage of a trauma bond forming, and that trauma bond in an unhealthy, toxic relationship. So that's what, why it's important for us to know. Now, and again, they did say that it's mostly romantic relationships where you see this, but it could happen with friends, family, and like what the article said, could even happen in a cult or institutional, organizational type setting. And so what are some of the warning signs? Well, one is when people like right off the bat start saying, showering you with compliments. We're so compatible. You're amazing. You're my soulmate. They talk about marriage early on when it's not really appropriate to talk about that. One of the terms that the Men Project said is a term called future faking. And I definitely experienced this, where you've only been talking for a week and they're already talking about this big vacation you're going to go on, creating a big family, the big wedding, right? All of these things. They understand what you like. This is another sign. They get really close. They ask you a lot of questions and get you to divulge a lot of information. And then they promise that to you. So in my particular case, I remember I had just broken up in a relationship with somebody that I thought I was going to marry and wanted to marry. I mentioned that to the love bomber that I ended up getting into a relationship with. And I definitely see that he dangled the marriage carrot for me. He ended up, we did not get married, thankfully, but that's one of those situations where I definitely saw that they were promising me the thing that I wanted, right? Other compliments like you complete me and other things like that. Mirroring is an intentional mirroring of another's dislikes and likes, values and behaviors to get them to connect with you. In other words, they copy what you value. They may not even value those things or like those things, but they pretend to get to connect with you and to get the other person to feel like they're being emotionally connecting with you. So they do a lot of pretending and faking. Now that might be hard to see, like when somebody is showering you with compliments and gifts and they seem to like the same things you like, it could feel really good. And so it might be hard to see that they're pretending or faking. But these are some of the signs, some flags to look at, right? If not maybe red flags, maybe they're like pink flags, right? Being given lavish gifts. Oftentimes, if it's done without any type of commitment, can be a manipulative tool to overlord the other person. And that can happen whether it's the beginning of a relationship or even when you're married, right? Like if somebody is using gifts to seemingly to manipulate you into doing something that the other person wants, then that could be a sign that this is being used for wrong purposes, right? Not because the person really truly loves you. And also with the gifts, oftentimes that makes you feel obligated for something in return. It's like the reciprocity, right? If you feel uncomfortable, then it could be a sign. It could be a red flag. So the other thing, and this fell for me too, empaths, so people who have just much more of an emotional capacity and a lot of empathy, tend to gaslight themselves. Oh, he's just being nice. Oh, he's just being romantic. Empaths tend to gaslight themselves. So gaslighting is like when somebody else tells you, no, 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 that's not right. No, you're crazy to think that. We will gaslight ourselves and be like, no, 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 that's crazy. No, no, no. So we'll gaslight ourselves. So that's something to think about. If you're gaslighting yourself, that could be a warning sign that the other person is love bombing you, or it might be a manipulative relationship. They are so interested and they want all the details, but they create a false intimacy and it's just too soon. If they're telling you they love you after like 2 dates, that is creating this false intimacy. It's just too soon. They're very charming. They can say all the right things because they're trying to mirror you. Now, of course, not all of these are going to apply to every single person that's love bombing, but these are some of the things. Let's say after an argument, they try to regain your attention and what's called hoovering. So sometimes the person who's being love bombed recognizes that this is not healthy and the relationship might not be healthy and they might pull back or they might get into an argument and the love bomber will try to hoover. Hoover is a vacuum. They like suck you back in. They find a way to suck you back in. Many times they don't take responsibility for their previous relationships. They talk about how crazy their exes are. And that's something I remember from reading from Dale Carnegie's How to Influence People. I forgot the name of that. But that one where it said, when Sally has a problem with everyone, the problem is Sally. And so if the person has a problem with every single one of their exes is crazy, the common denominator there is the love bomber, right? So that's a way, something to keep in mind as well. And they may be very clingy, very needy, or then they may even ghost you. So maybe they create this strong intimacy too soon, and then they'll ghost you, right? And so it's a manipulative tactic to kind of get you back in. Now, sometimes this could happen organically for many different reasons, but we're talking about people who are actually doing this, intentionally. They're doing it as a way to get an upper hand, shift the power dynamic in a relationship. And actually, that's a really good term. The power dynamic is usually where the abuse occurs. And so oftentimes when somebody shifts the emotional connection in a relationship, that can create that power dynamic. So the love bomber wants to create that control. They want you to be readily available to them or demand your attention. It's been very known also with narcissists that they take you away from your friends. They literally might badmouth your family or badmouth your friends or try to take you all to themselves, right? So they want you all to themselves. They make you give up your autonomy and your friendships. And there's a pressure oftentimes for them, for you to commit to them or even to marry them. So that actually happened to me. The person actually manipulated me into getting into a relationship with him, which I see now, of course, in hindsight. But at the time, I didn't recognize. I felt like I was so love bombed. I felt so loved by this person that then when he put that on the line, then I felt committed into getting into a relationship with him. It was almost like a reciprocity. Like, you've made me feel so loved, so I guess I have to now be in a relationship. And of course, now I see that as super unhealthy. But at the time, it was all happening at a subconscious level. Oh, this is a really big one, guys. They ignore your boundaries. Why? Because they don't care about your boundaries. And if you find that you don't even have boundaries, right? I have another video that I talked about that. I will add that. It might even be in the description. So make sure that if you find that you don't have boundaries or they're constantly overstepping your boundaries, that could be a sign. Or they're angry if you place boundaries, that's a warning sign. They might lash out if you question them, if you criticize them. They don't really have any ability of self-reflection. So back to my crazy ex, every one of my exes is crazy, right? They don't take any ownership. They don't have any self-reflection or self-awareness in what their part is. Now, she said this is a major red flag, and this could definitely be dangerous. They may follow your whereabouts. So they kind of may be stalking you. Don't let anyone ever get your map, unless it's your family member or somebody like that, or your husband, or your spouse. But if you don't trust the person yet or fully trust the person, don't send them your what is it called? The little map that shows you where you are. Don't send that, because they may show up. Let's say you get into this has happened to me where actually not this exact situation, but I've heard it with other people where they say that they were going somewhere and then the person shows up, even though you place a boundary, maybe you got into an argument or something like that. So keep that in mind. That could be very dangerous, especially in a DV situation. If they show up and then they convince you to go back to them, that could be a very dangerous situation. So keep that in mind. They try to provide reassurance and validation early on. They may be jealous of your friends and family. She called it, there's this thing called the self-love deficit disorder, which actually is really common with the people who are being love bombed. So we didn't receive the love from our family, or we didn't learn to learn how to love ourselves. So it's called the self-love deficit disorder. And so what happens is the love bomber, whether it's conscious or not, and I think probably most of them are at least somewhat conscious, whether it's conscious or not, because they've got their own issues, they probably didn't get any love either. They're bombing you with the love and attention, which makes you feel good. And you're not able to realize that that is a replacement for the love you didn't get as a child, or the love you aren't able to feel yourself. And so she says, a lot of times it's an underlying self-doubt of you're not lovable. When somebody is showering you with love, it feels good. And it feels like it's real love, but it's actually basically a manipulative tactic, unfortunately. So this can be very, a lot of times people could think it is romantic. And that's why I'm making this, because a lot of times it's not just one. If it's just one of these things somebody's doing with you, like if everything seems copacetic and normal and healthy and they're giving you gifts because they really like you, that is fine. It's when it's the gifts with the jealousy, with the other, like trying to get too many details too soon and calling you their soulmate and telling you they love you. So all the things too much. That's what the bomb is. It's like bomb, 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 bomb. Like if it's like one and then like a week or two goes by and then another thing and a week or two goes by, but it's like the bombing is like they keep showering you with that attention and praise and gifts and love. So she says, trust your gut, which I always say, be cautious and listen to your body in responding. And so now I know if I feel really uncomfortable about something, to me, that's a sign. So I think that's really important. So another thing is, how has he been treating you in the recent past? And so sometimes and I know this I know I did this, when they switched after the love bombing to not treating me well and putting me down, I kept on going back to that old time when he was showering me with praise and seemingly putting me on a pedestal. And so I kept saying, oh, well, that's who he really is. He's not like this. And so, but he kept on with the treating me not well. And then like I said a bit ago, the hoovering. So like when I was like, oh, no, I'm not going to deal with this. And I would start to separate, he would hoover back, say he was sorry, apologize, and start treating me well. It's like a little dangling. And so just keep that in mind. There is a trauma bond cycle where the person love bombs you, then they devalue, which in my case was like the person putting me down. That was a devaluing. And then when the person who's being love bombed starts to pull away because they know that doesn't feel good, then the love bomber goes back to hoovering, which is trying to suck you back in. And it's a cycle. It's a trauma bond cycle that keeps going and keeps going. And so one thing that's really interesting is this has never happened to me that I'm aware of, but this could be a really big sign. If the person, let's say you separate from them and all of a sudden they are sick or they get into an accident or something bad happens or they lose their job. And it's a way to like suck you back in to feeling sorry for them or to showing them some care and compassion. If they threaten to show up wherever you're at, if you don't respond to their text, right? This is emotional abuse. She actually says you should block the person, right? Like if you can find a way to get out of the relationship, it's not healthy. This is emotional abuse. And so if you can find a way to block them, especially early on, do so. She says, stop dating them if you need to be fully capable. Like stop dating them if you need to. You have to learn to trust yourself and be fully capable of discernment, which is a skill, frankly, if you haven't learned that. If you didn't learn that as a child and you didn't really feel like you were loved, it could be hard to discern, right? And so this is a skill that you might need to develop. Maybe you go to therapy to really start to understand what happened in past relationships or in your existing relationship. And so people who are in that self-love deficit disorder are more prone to be love bombed. And, you're more prone to be love bombed if your parent was emotionally detached or unavailable and the child yearns for attention. So if that feels like you when you were a child, then you might be more prone to be love bombed. If gifts in your household were used for affection, then you might be more prone to love bombing. If you were raised in an abusive environment, love bombing feels good because it releases endorphins. And The person may or may not know it. So they may be conscious of it, or it just may be a real insecurity because maybe they weren't shown love. So they're doing the, like, basically the reverse. They saw maybe in their household that one of their parents showered the other parent with love and affection, or showered them with love and affection. And so they're using that. That's what they know. And so they're using that. For those who are not conscious of it, it could be their own insecurity. And so she says, if it feels like a fairy tale, you have to pause, right? So if it feels like a fairy tale and things are going too fast, pause and really learn to assess the situation. Know your own weaknesses and vulnerabilities, because the love bomber will try to find that. They'll try to get information from you, and they'll try to find what your weakness and vulnerabilities are to play up on that, to gain your attention, your affection, and your trust. So, and again, she asks, are you gaslighting yourself? Right? You might try to brush it under the rug. I know for sure I did that when I was dating somebody who was love bombing me. I definitely tried to brush it under the rug. And let's see. Oh, this is very big. So if you're with somebody who's love bombing you and they're overstepping your boundaries, you need to create boundaries, and there must be consequences to people overstepping your boundaries. If there are no consequences, then it's just a complaint. And so really the important part of the boundary is not just creating a boundary and being clear about your boundaries, but then also making sure that there is a consequence, an outcome, a result if the person does not follow your boundary. And you have to be really clear about that too. She says, steer clear of narcissists. The problem is that sometimes we can't identify narcissists because they're very charming. And they may seem, again, love bombing, they may seem really nice on the outside. You really have to kind of get deeper and closer and more emotionally connected to a narcissist to really know if they are truly a narcissist. But she said, try to steer clear of them. If you know who they are, or people complain about them being narcissists, then, just steer clear of them. She said, don't skip over the red flags, don't skip over the signs just because they did something nice. So that's part of there's a trauma cycle trauma bond cycle with narcissists. And I know I've definitely fell into that trap too. So it's part of so it's the love bombing where they do a bunch of nice things for you. They devalue you, where you start to like second guess what's going on. And then when you start to try to get out of it or place a boundary, they hoover back in, they try to do something nice for you. And then you're like, oh, okay. And then it gets you sucked back in. If somebody is not treating you well and they do something nice for you, that is a sign that you're in that trauma cycle with them. So really try to understand that, be clear about that for yourself. And I know this is hard. And I say this as somebody who this has happened to. And so part of what I want to do is try to bring these warning signs to light so that we can be clear of that if we end up in a relationship like this. So she says to write down the red or yellow flags that you're seeing in your relationship and share that with a friend or a therapist. So one thing I know what happened with me is I felt really embarrassed. And so I didn't want to talk to anybody about it. But the better thing to do is to actually do share it with somebody. So I actually didn't talk to my friends about it, but I did have a therapist, and the therapist helped me identify it and helped me get out of that relationship. And so at the very least, if you can't or don't feel comfortable sharing with a friend, try to find a counselor or a therapist that you can speak to. And nowadays, most insurances cover therapy. And if you don't have insurance, then there are some, like usually at universities, might have an inexpensive option for therapy, like basically like people who are getting their doctorates, who need to train in that. And there might be some, and they're very good. They're basically about to become full-fledged therapists. They need the training hours. And so there might be an inexpensive option there for you to get therapy in wherever city, state, or country that you live in. Okay, so she said, write down what are the red and yellow flags for you. And then she said, write down what is a healthy relationship, and she gave some examples. if there is mutual listening, if there is good communication, if there's mutual empathy and compassion and kindness, if there's consideration for each other's well-being. So basically, it's the mutual part. If one person, like I remember, I was carrying a lot of the emotional compassion and kindness in the relationship. People were telling me that I was a saint for being with that person. Enough people told me that I was like, oh, this is not good. I don't want to be, I'm not trying to be the saint in this relationship. I want to be with somebody who treats me with compassion and kindness as well. So that was actually a really good sign that that person wasn't right for me, right? When other people are telling you things like that, that's actually a really, really good sign. When people are telling you, oh my gosh, the person you're with is amazing. He or she is a great person. That person is so sweet and so nice. Like that's a good sign that you're with a nice person, that you're with a kind person, that you're with somebody who does have empathy and compassion. But if people are telling you, you know, kind of giving you side eye or telling you that you're the saint or that you're whatever, you know, that you're putting up with, oh, it's amazing. How do you put up with that person? Giving you little things like that, that could be a sign that you might be ignoring the warning signs. So that write down what your red or yellow flags are. I guess it's instead of pink flags, it's called yellow flags. Write down what is a healthy relationship for you, and then state your boundaries and uphold your boundaries. Because if you don't, it's easier to get into the trauma bond trap. So that is what I wanted to talk about. So those were the warning signs, those are the warning signs that you may be with somebody who is love bombing you. And the part that gets dangerous is that the love bombing can have you end up in a DV situation. Either you're being emotionally abused, psychologically abused, financially abused, and then, or worse, SA, physical abuse, and other types of abuse. And so that's why it's important to see these warning signs early on so that we can not only identify them, but do something about it. And very important, I think I have it also in the description. If you feel like you're in a DV situation, if you feel like you're in a toxic relationship, you want to get out and you need help, maybe you feel alone, maybe you don't know how to leave. Can be dangerous leaving a DV situation for a multitude of different reasons. If you've got children in the household with you, maybe there is a more strategic way and you need support to get out of that relationship. There is the DV hotline. And if I don't have it in the description, I will make sure to add it to the comments as well. And yes, so I think that's what I wanted to talk about today. I have asked the director of the Men Project. I'm going to be setting up an interview with her, so I hope that you'll be able to listen directly to her. She's so smart and just has such great content and so many good resources that I hope that we'll be able to share very soon. All right, everyone. I would love to hear in the comments what was your biggest takeaway from today. And with that, I wish you a blessed weekend. Remember to trust your intuition, or at least listen to your intuition, right? Listen to your intuition, listen to your gut. Remember, you deserve a relationship that builds you up, not tears you down. If you found this video helpful, you may also enjoy this one. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe for more tips on dating intentionally toward holy matrimony. And God bless.